So for my first YouTube video, I want to talk about post-travel depression, keep it light. But there is not like a few times a month, I speak to somebody who kind of tells me that they want to pack their bags, quit their job, go travel. And it's a really popular thing these days, right? It's almost a rite of passage for some people. It's very much popularized on social media. And it's very common, and it was for me too. Like when I was younger, I was always into like my nature, the outdoors, adventure, and I always had this dream to one day get the money, the time to be able to kind of just go travel, see the world, and do something epic. Anyway, in my early to mid 30s, I had the opportunity to do this. So I took 18 months out and I went on this around the world trip. Well, sort of around the world. Just to give you a bit of context to what I did. I started in Everest Base Camp, then I worked through Southeast Asia, then I went down to Australia, New Zealand, and then up to the Far East, so like Japan's, Korea's, Taiwan's great, by the way. And then I went over to South America and started right at the north and worked my way all the way down to the southern tip, which was Ushuaia, and then from there I went to Antarctica. That was like the icing on the cake. It was like the holy grail of what I wanted to do. And the trip was epic. It was arguably one of the most memorable things that I've done. And even to this day, it kind of, I look through my photos and it brings me joy. But I came home and I went into this desperate state of depression. Like I could kind of laugh about it and say it with a smile, but it really wasn't funny. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but hopefully you can read between the lines of what I'm trying to say. But it was really confusing to me because, well, I've just done a once in a lifetime trip. I've done something that was very self-actualizing. It was something which I'd always aspired to do. And also, whilst there were things that I needed to work on, like my life wasn't objectively bad, right? And I could never figure this out because it's like, what went wrong here? Anyway, cue a few years. I've been reading around different topics and sort of going, oh, well, that relates to that. But then also I spoke to a lot of people about this, and I'm talking above 50, possibly 100. And many of them who I met when I was traveling as well. And this isn't some deep empirical study. This is just my estimations. But I would say that 100% of people experience some low feeling when they get back. I think this is normal even if you go for a week in Rome. You get back, you go back to work, it's raining, or at least in England it is. And it's kind of like, it's that feeling. I would say that 40 to 50% of people experience what is like a prolonged sadness. And this is where like that low feeling stretches into weeks or months, right? And 15 to 20% experience something what would be classed as clinical depression. And so what I want to say is like, this isn't that rare, number one. And then secondly, there's certain patterns that you see emerging. Now, I do believe everybody's sort of, like if you do experience this, I think the triggers can be very different depending on individual personalities, the type of trip you do, which I'll explain. But as I said, there are patterns there. And as I said, it's something that is common, and it's something that I feel that enough people don't talk about. So here we are. So before I go into the grumpy stuff, I want to just talk about the benefits of travel, because first and foremost, I don't want to dissuade anybody from traveling. Like if you have the opportunity, the money, the time, the resources to be able to go, 100% do it. Like it's such a great experience. But also I think the good things kind of contribute to the challenges, or potential challenges when you return. Because travel offers things that are very hard to emulate day to day. And so for example, one of the first things that really hit me was like, oh shit, I'm in control of my time. Because I don't think we realize this, but a lot of our time is dictated by others, right? So, when you're younger, it's school timetables, you're trying to get your grades, doing homework, then you go to uni, probably a similar pattern. Then you go to the world of work, and then it's all KPIs, you're on a schedule. look, you get, paid time off and everything, but I don't think it's long enough that you can like fully decompress and feel free. It's always at the back of your mind that you have to go back to work. But this freedom kind of extends to things like freedom of identity. Because again, back at home, or you can be, depending on your personality and your sort of attributes, I guess. But so much of your identity comes from like your job titles, your university you went to, the clothes you wear, the social circles that you mix in. And when you're traveling, like nobody gives a shit about your job. Nobody cares about, like even with clothes wise, you're probably wearing like a $5 t-shirt that you found at a market, right? And there is something really liberating about that. It's hard to describe unless you've experienced it, but there's something really nice about that. The fact that you can be just you for once, because we never really understand how much this stuff impacts us. And then with the time freedom as well, there's like, if dopamine is linked to anticipation of reward, like this time freedom, each day you're waking up with just this huge anticipation, right? So it's very exciting, it's very dopamine inducing, because you don't know who you're going to meet. Even if you've got like tours booked or you're off climbing a mountain or something, there's still the anticipation for that. And it's really, really good feeling. But also, like, actually, let me expand on the time thing. So I've turned 40 recently. Actually, it wasn't recently. I'm almost 41. But last year I turned 40. One of the things you realize is that time speeds up as you get older. And it's quite jarring. Like if you stop and think about it, it's almost like existential crisis. But yeah, time speeds up. And the sort of theory behind this is that it's a lack of new experiences, right? You're kind of stuck in a routine, days merge into months, and before you know it, it's Christmas again. So if that's true, then it could be reasonable to assume it's the same when you travel. And it is. Sorry, it's the opposite when you travel. And it is, because like each day is filled with so much uniqueness that, like, I swear to you, like a week feels like a month. And I shared a Facebook post about, like, this was just a random post, but it lists out what I did. And this was just in a 10-day span. I climbed a 5,000 meter peak. This was more like a trekking peak. Then I did the Death Road in Bolivia. Then I climbed a 6,000 meter peak. This was for New Year's Eve. Absolutely epic climb to see the new year in. Then I went to the Uyuni Salt Flats, and then after that to the Atacama Desert. That was in like 10 days. And my whole trip was like this. Time really slows down. I swear to you, it feels like almost eternity when you're traveling. It's a really, again, really, really cool feeling. And confidence is the other one, I think. Because look, when you're traveling, you're going to encounter problems. Or if you've traveled, then you again, you know what I mean. But sometimes you miss connections, you're meeting new people, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. Like, let's say if you're an introvert, you're kind of going to be interacting with people. So you're building that confidence there. On top of this, like, your body feels really good because you're not hunched over a desk for like 40, 50 hours a week, right? So, you're exercising without even realizing you're exercising. You've gone for a walk in central Tokyo and, you've clocked up 10, 15,000 steps, or you're just swimming in the pool. Again, very passively. This is without doing the big mountains and the peaks and diving and stuff like that. But on the mental side, so many years ago, I was going to do I believe it was Aconcagua, one of the Himalayan peaks, but I was looking at climbing a mountain, and I was reading the dossier, and this is like it's a plan of the trip and advice and kit lists and stuff like that. And in the dossier, there was something that really stuck with me. It said that 3 months before the trip, try and cut off from news and try and cut off from social media. Now, we already know social media is bad for you, but the news bit really was interesting because what they said, it causes micro anxiety. And I've read up on this since, and it's true. So when you're traveling, you're kind of disconnected from the news cycle. And I don't think, again, you realize how much this impacts you until you've actually experienced it without. And you kind of feel like this fogginess and this sort of little worry. Because, you know, like right now you turn on the news, it's like World War III is going to break out tomorrow, and this, that, this bad thing here, this bad thing there. And it can kind of weigh on you if you let it. But yeah, travel is, you know, you don't have to worry about this stuff. So those are the good bits of traveling. And now I want to talk about the challenges, because obviously that's the topic of this video. So I came back home and I was fine for a bit, because you're kind of kept afloat initially, because you're meeting your friends, you're meeting your family, you have your wardrobe, you have like your bed, which feel like ultimate luxuries when you return home. But let me provide a bit of context to this. So I was working for a law firm before I went traveling, and I didn't enjoy the job. So a part of my motivator for going on the trip was a form of escapism, because I wasn't feeling fulfilled in life, and so I was looking, I guess, for a panacea or something where it was like, okay, I want to escape and go and do this thing, and hopefully it will cure this feeling. And it did while I was traveling. And then I came back and I started working at the same law firm, which was a really bad idea. Now, I don't want to throw shade at the legal industry, but it is really boring. A lot of it's just paper. Like, it depends what area in legal you're working, but a lot of it's just paper pushing. You're just filling out forms and printing things out, sending it, doing phone calls. And you've gone from like one extreme to another. You've just been having the ultimate trip where you're like on a high up there, and then you come back. And like, not only do you not enjoy the job, first of all, you're going from like one extreme. Now you've got that come down to deal with. And the whole time you're thinking, I know what good feels like. I know what it's like to be out and just having my best life. I know how little I need to actually be able to do this. Now, look, I want to be clear. I get that this is reality. You know, you've got to work, and sometimes work can suck and so forth. But what I'm saying is you have a really, really big contrast here. And this even extends into relationships, because when you're traveling and you experience this, like, you meet people all the time, and in many instances, like, you're best friends after 10 minutes. But when you're at home, you know, people are more guarded. You know, it's harder to interact with people. People are less receptive as well. Now, I don't want to, again, this is just life, because, I mean, it doesn't have to be, granted, but it is reality. People have bills to pay. They're thinking about work. They're thinking about responsibilities and so forth. I get that travel is an outlier, but again, this stuff really hits you. And another aspect of this, and I think this was more specific to me, I think again, it depends on the type of trip you do. But for me, this was a bucket list trip. And I hit off a lot of my bucket list. And I went to Antarctica, which was like my ultimate goal. And there's something called post-goal depression. So a lot of Olympians, bodybuilders, sports people feel this, where you devote your whole life to achieving something. Now, I don't know any Olympians, but I do know bodybuilders. They put all their effort into winning trophies and so forth, and like devote such a huge portion of their life to it. But then you do it, and then it's like, oh wow, now what, right? And there's loads of interviews with sports people talking about this, but it's kind of like that with travel. I remember coming back from Antarctica, and this was like the most awesome experience. I keep saying this because it was. But when I was on my way back, so I was coming back to Argentina, I remember I was just sat on the ship in silence, and I was like, what now? Like, I've just done it. Like, what do I do now? You know? The only way I can describe it is, it's like, if you're a gamer, it's like completing a main story and then you're free roaming. Yeah, you can still I'm having to redo this a few days later, hence the different attire. But where was I? Okay, so let's call that what it was. It was a loss of purpose. Related to this is external validation. Now, when you're traveling, everybody's super interested in where you've been, your stories, sharing experiences, sharing photographs, etc. And on top of this, you have things like social media, where maybe if you're sharing photos, you're sharing your daily stories, you're getting your likes, you're getting messages, saying, "Oh, that looks great," etc. By the way, if you want to check out my social media, I know this sounds weird given the context of what I've just been saying, but I'm not looking for followers. But if you just want to check out the photos, hopefully get inspired, feel free to do so. But you have a lot of this external validation. When you get back home, this all disappears. Because look, people have different priorities. Not everybody's interested in traveling. When you're traveling, you're all kind of pursuing the same thing. You're there for the same reasons. You're part of a community, and this evaporates overnight. And speaking to people, this is something that, again, really feels weird once you return home. Okay, so just to wrap this up, given what I know now, what would I have done differently? And just to reiterate, I think everybody's experience is different. This is just mine. Now, but speaking to people as well, one of the strongest correlators for post-travel depression, I think, is the duration of your trip. So I've done loads of road trips and stuff that were 1 month long, and this stuff never really hit. I do think the longer your trip, the more it hits. So if you're going over, 9 months, the chances increase. Would I have done a shorter trip? No, I don't think so. Firstly, I just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed doing a longer trip. But secondly, for practical reasons. One, it's cheaper when you do a trip in a single go. Now, naturally, if I was flying from the UK out to Asia, back home, back to Australia, back home, back to South America, it adds cost to this. But then more importantly, it's the practicalities of this. Now, if you're self-employed, this is easier. But if you're working for somebody, taking this much time off is not always feasible. Again, if you're job hunting, then you've got the challenge of the job hunt when you get back. But then also, you may not get the opportunity again. So right now, in this present moment, I have an ACL injury that I picked up playing sports. I would not be able to do the technical climbs. I would not be able to do the big treks. I would be very limited in what I can do. So I think doing this and getting it out the way is kind of a good idea, because you never know what curveballs life is going to throw at you. So I mentioned that I wasn't overly content before I left. And one of the other things that I would have done was actually set goals, and probably even thought about these while I was traveling, and figured out what was it that I actually wanted to do. Because I came back home, and for a reasonable amount of time, I was flailing around just aimlessly. And as a result of that, I went back to the law firm, and I kind of ended up back in the situation where I was. And I do wish that I spent time thinking, even while I was traveling, as I said, about what would move the needle on this, right? And this could be new hobbies, a bit of excitement, whatever, but just figuring out what I want, and then at least you've got something to aim for and focus your attention towards. So linking to this, yes, being back in a routine is one of the challenges when you return from travel, but one of the things that I wish I'd done sooner was actually build out a solid routine. And I can't believe I'm saying this, because 15 years ago, I hated structure. I was always spontaneous. But now it's over the last couple of years, I've really worked on building, a good routine, and it's made such a difference. I think it's protective for mental health. So first of all, if you're feeling down, it gives a sense of control. But secondly, this can be deliberate and it can be fun. You can emulate travel to a degree. So you can go out and see local things. I never explored my local area until COVID. But this could be anything. You could do kayaking, you can, take up golf, new hobbies, etc. And also from the social side, you can join meetup, join a sports group, go salsa dancing, But I think the big thing here is actually building a degree of structure, but then also not isolating yourself, because I did this and it kind of creates a vicious cycle because you feel down, you don't feel motivated to go out and do things, and it kind of starts spiraling down, and I think it makes it worse. What I'm trying to say is that yes, you've returned home from travel, but it doesn't need to end there. You can still have a good time. And as a final point, the thing that I feel helped me the most, and I wish I'd done it sooner because it took me like 6 months before I actually started, but was taking up a new creative hobby. I, by chance, found some chisels that I'm guessing a tradesperson left lying around. And I started just playing around with these, just doing very rudimentary joints. But then this quickly evolved into actually designing furniture. As a matter of fact, behind me, the desk that you can see, this is something that was made. That's something that I've made. But one thing, the thing that I found really helped with doing something creative was, one, you're getting a sense of accomplishment along with novelty. But more importantly, you go into a flow state. So, and when you're in a flow state, by the way, I love flow states. I think they're like the best thing, but it stops you ruminating. It kind of moves your attention from inside your head to outside your head. And this had a massive, massive impact. But again, this could be anything. This could be drawing on a notepad. It could be playing a new instrument, even like just learning how to drum or do a paradiddle, or maybe dancing or whatever. But I do believe humans are a creative species, and I think this is really important.